What is up, everybody? It's your boy Bash Reviews, and today I'm going to be reviewing the manga Homunculus. So, where do I even start? So with me, what draws me to a manga is the art. Like, if I see that the art is like really good, then I'll be like, okay, I'll check that out. Especially if it's like horror or psychological based, then I'm normally like really drawn to it, and I'm like, oh, okay, this looks pretty cool. Let me like check it out, right? It's one of those things that I started being like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna like maybe check. Maybe it's like it's a short psychological or horror sort of manga, and let me just check out like a little bit of it. And then it just ended up me being like binge reading all of it, and it's not really that long. It's only about it's 15 volumes. Yeah, it's 15 volumes. It only took me like less than 2 weeks to read. And what can I really say about this manga? I mean, it's strange. Obviously, it's really strange, and I obviously going into it, I expected it to be strange, and that's one thing that I was like looking forward to. I was like, okay, something like out of the box. The box. Sorry. So it was something out of the box, and I was like, okay, this will probably be interesting. So I started reading it, and then I was like, okay, so it's about trypanesium. It's basically the process of drilling or cutting like a hole through your skull, um, in order to like in order for your brain to go into like a childlike state. I'm trying to like describe it as best as I can, because obviously I didn't really know much going into the manga, especially on the topic that it speaks about. But basically, opening a hole into the skull enables like more oxygen, and basically makes your brain work. You know that meme where it's like, oh, what happens if we use 100% of the brain? It's sort of like that, where okay, it allows the person to use more of their brain. Yeah, basically that's like the premise of it, and it kind of like goes into a lot of topics and a lot of like different stuff, which is one thing that I did like about it. Because honestly, one thing I really can say about this manga is that I was never bored reading it. Like, there was never a part where, I think maybe like a single part where I was just like, okay, this is like a lot of reading. Like, you know, every single chapter had like something really interesting for me to read, and that's one thing that I really liked about it. Where I was like, okay, this is I haven't seen anything like this done before, and there's a reason why a lot of people mark it as like a really good manga, and even I would describe it as a really good manga as well. But one of the things that like it goes wrong, in my opinion, is like, I don't know, man. Like, it's execution sometimes. Like sometimes, like, you know, with edgy or like shock, like wow factor kind of things. I normally like that kind of stuff. Like, that's like Berserk had that. Berserk had a lot of that, and I really loved it. But even after reading Berserk, some of the stuff that I was just like reading and viewing is just like unsettling. Like, that's the only thing that I can describe it as, like unsettling and honestly disgusting at times. I'm not gonna lie. Like there's a lot to cover in this manga. Like, okay, I'll just start talking about the art. The art in this manga, I mean, that was one of the main things that drew me into the manga in the first place, was this art. And it's kind of one of those things that the creator of Berserk, he executed like excellently, where it's kind of like, what kind of mind do you need to have in order to come up with like all of these really bizarre creatures, all of this like super weird random stuff. And that, like, I was like, damn, like, this is actually super good. Like, the art is actually really good, and it kind of like sets itself apart differently a little bit from other manga artists. Like, the art is like super good. It kind of reminds me of like, and just have like a black, and then like put white. You start like with a black canvas instead of a white one, if that makes sense, and then you add to it. And it's just like it just kind of made your brain just go like be active the whole time you're reading it, because again there was a lot of stuff that it covered, and there was a lot of stuff that I was speaking about, and it was just super interesting, honestly. And then the art again, like it just really made me be like, okay, like this is interesting. Like I haven't seen all of these. Like it's like literally drawing monsters, stuff called homunculus, which obviously you need to read the manga itself for you to like truly understand what I mean with like homunculus. But it's kind of like your true self, and then also that like it has you wondering more and more like what actually is he seeing, or what's that homunculus? What actually is a homunculus? Because like there's so many conclusions that we got to with what he was seeing. So I know it's a little bit confusing the way I'm explaining it, but basically it's a man called I think his name like Nikoshi, but honestly I'm super bad with remembering names with like honestly I'm just super bad with remembering names. But this person he lives in between, basically. He's homeless. He lives in his car. There's a like high on this side. There's like a really expensive high 5-star hotel, and then on the other side there's a park with a bunch of homeless people. So his homeless. He came from this part. He was like he had a really good life. Everything. He had a good job. He had women. He had like basically everything he wanted, like at face value that we can see. And then on the other side, it's like the extreme opposite. It's homeless people. It's people like struggling. And then since he came from that, and all of a sudden he's found himself inside the other spectrum of it. He's like in the middle of it. That's why he parks his car in the middle of the park, full of homeless people, and then the high rated restaurant. And then that was actually one of the reasons why he was picked, because it starts with somebody, a man who was like observing him. He approached him, and then he said, like, he explained Japaneseium to him, and he wanted to conduct it on him just because he read about it, he researched about it, but he never but he's curious. Like what he said, half of him is like believing in it, and then because he's like super smart in science and psychology and everything, like he said that he had the qualification and like the knowledge of a doctor when he was graduated high school, which really shows how smart he is. And the fact that he just wanted to do this experiment is like where it starts. This is where the story starts. So he approaches him and is like, oh, do this Japaneseium thing and I'll give you like 700,000 yen. And then at first he declines it, but then the man, he gets his only possession, his car, towed away. So since he got it towed away, he kind of was like forced to accept his offer, because obviously like that was his only kind of thing, if that makes sense. That was like the only thing that he had left. So he got his car towed away, and then he said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then he helps him out, and then we found out that this person that wants to do the Japaneseium experiment on him, his basically his father owns a hospital, and I think like a medical firm or something like that. But he's the head doctor of a hospital. Jojo's part 8. I'll do a review on that later, but that's kind of where it starts at, with the person being explaining like, oh, I want to do this experiment, and obviously you're not allowed to do it normally, but I just want to see for myself. So he goes through with the surgery. He has a hole like right here. He drills a hole inside of his head, and he's like, oh, try seeing, through my research, I've seen people have said that they've gotten ESP powers from it and all of this stuff. Like it's for you to, the whole Japaneseium effect is for you to be able to like basically awaken your sixth sense, in a sense. I know it's a little bit of a tongue twister, but That's like the premise of it. Like that's where it starts off at, and then everything after that was just like kind of honestly, it was just like super confusing. I'm gonna probably skip like a lot of stuff because there's like a bunch of stuff to cover, and I just came back from playing basketball, so I'm a bit tired today. But I still wanted to make a video, so he finally gets the hole drilled in his cranium in the front of his head, and then his the person's like, okay, for 10 days, I'm paying you for the 10 days to conduct the experiment to see if the trypanesium actually worked. And at first, nothing happened. Like he's just like, oh, nothing happened. And then I think like later that day, he has like cards, and then he's like, oh, you have to like, there's like there's five cards that are the same, and then I'm gonna turn all of them over from a pack of deck, and you have to like pick which ones are actually there. And he said like the probability of getting all five of them or something is like some really low chance, and then he gets 4 out of 5. And then that's where it like begins because after that he says like, oh, try covering your right eye. He covers his right eye, and then his that's when he's able to actually get 4 out of 5. And then also like it's just, so after that he leaves, and then he goes into the town center, and he covers his right eye, and then when he glances, there's like all of these different homunculus. We didn't know what they were before, but then it's like basically like a bunch of. I mean, okay. Let me try bringing up like an image on my other phone. Okay, so I got my second phone, and this is actually the image that like made me want to read it. This is my second phone, so I'm not sure how clear you can see it, but it's like a bunch of like weird, obscure things, and you can tell that they're human for the most part, but other than that, it's like just super weird. Okay, so that was when he covered his right eye. That's what he saw, and then obviously, he just kept like staring at people, and then he was staring at a Yakuza boss, and he basically calls him over. He's like, "What are you looking at?" And then he sees like a robot. He sees him as a robot, and then he starts speaking to him a little bit. But then it's kind of weird because he can see people's hearts, which is like homunculus, but then he can also speak to them. So he starts speaking a little bit to the person, and the Yakuza boss, he starts like crying because he said something like, "Oh, don't cut your own finger," because he had a sickle and he had his pinky. He's like, "Don't cut your pinky," and then the little boy that he was seeing inside of the robot, he starts crying, and then it makes the Yakuza boss in turn actually start crying, and then that's like our first introduction to like what the actual like what his powers or whatever it is he's seeing. And then the next day, the Yakuza boss, he orders his men to find him. So they find him, they bring him to a building, and then it's just the Yakuza boss in there. He says to his bodyguards, leave. He's talking to him. He's like, "What did you do to me yesterday?" Like, and then he starts like speaking to the Yakuza boss. He was like, he covers his right eye and starts talking to the boy inside of the robot that what he was seeing, and then the Yakuza. It was like a weird scene. I'm not gonna lie because he walked. Okay, we'll skip past that, but um, he basically finds out later on that the reason why he was holding a sickle was because as a boy like he was obsessed with chopping people's fingers off. He's like, I'm gonna get my revenge. Whenever anyone upsets him, he goes straight to chopping their fingers off, if that makes sense. So here you can see an image of like what he was seeing. So you can see that the boy, this is the boy, and then he's in like a robot suit, and then he's holding like a sickle. He's gonna chop. So from that you can see that like the stuff that he sees when he covers his right eye is like super weird and obscure, but then it has a meaning behind it at the same time. So because he was saying, "Oh, don't chop your finger," something like that, to the accuser boss, he got like all emotional, and then it broke down like the pieces of the it broke down the pieces of the robot, and then it was just a boy there crying. And then later on, we find out that the Yakuza basically confesses that at a young age, he didn't mean to, but he was with his friend. He was trying to cut some grass, but then he accidentally chopped his friend's finger off. And then that's where he got like his obsession with cutting people's fingers off and everything. And it was just like, I don't know, it's kind of like therapy in a way. And then that was like our first introduction to like what was actually going to happen to throughout the rest of the series. And after that, I'm pretty sure it was the girl, like if you read it, you know which one I'm talking about. But it was like, that's one of the things that I didn't like about it, was that like there was just a bunch of stuff that was like super shocking. I was like, it's kind of unnecessary for you to, like, I don't know, man, like, because you know some people, I've read like a few people like kind of explaining why they actually like the stuff that I dislike, and I kind of understand it, where it's like it's trying to tackle like certain things and issues and like sort of like psychological um like insecurities and things. And then they were saying that like, what, like, why would you try dumbing down the situation if like why are you trying to dumb down the situation and like not say it, do it like directly in a way. And obviously this is me trying to like explain it, but at the same time it's best to like actually read it. But this is just like a dumbed down explanation of what Homunculus manga actually is, which is why you should still read it even after my review on it. So after that, he starts speaking to the person that was doing the test in the first place a little bit more about his experience and what happened when he covers his right eye. And then he was asked like, what are the things that I'm seeing? And then they were like, oh, they're homunculus. And it's explained that this is why it gets confusing with the whole like what is actually seeing, because we got like so many explanations on what it could actually be, which like one of the things that he saw that he came up with, the solution of what he was seeing that he came up with, was that because that you were able to like, since your brain's able to get more oxygen, it's able to like work better, and you're using like a part of your brain that you wouldn't usually. So you're picking up like small, slight, tiny little details that everybody else would overlook, and that's why you're able to, and like your fate and your mind just like constructs them into something that is known as a homunculus. And that's like the one of the main explanations of it. And that like explains why like things that he would like nobody would notice but he can. And then that's why he's able to tell something, like someone has some sort of past with like their neck or their arm or something like that. Like let's say that the homunculus that is seeing like he looks at somebody and then their arm is like exaggerated. It probably has something to do, like the person probably has something to do with like their left arm, you understand? So that's kind of like where he starts going off at. And what is it? And it just kind of goes up from there, where his like basically different experiences and interaction with other people when he's seeing the homunculus. So the second person that we have an experience with is this girl. She's a 17-year-old girl, and then they basically go to this I don't even know what it's called, but it's basically this place where you can pay to view women doing like stuff. You don't touch them or anything. I think it's a one-sided wall, and then they're drawn to like this one girl. I think they nicknamed her like 11013 or something like that. Like that was her number, and that's what like they just call her from then on. And they basically, he's like, oh, what can you go in there and see what you can see with like these women's homunculus. And then one of them is a schoolgirl. She's 17, okay, and then they follow her, and then there was like this whole like interaction with them. But then one of the main scenes with this girl was, bro, Tell me why I'm on the bus. I'm just chilling. I'm like, okay, this shit fire, right? Like let me just vibe. Like I'm literally just on the bus reading the Homunculus manga, and then bro, a freaking rape scene comes up with this 17-year-old girl, and I'm just there like, bro, who read this, man? Like what? What is wrong with you? Like the guy, the main guy, who's seen the Homunculus. Like there's a bunch that I've skipped over because obviously it'd be way too long to explain. But the the underlying thing that you should that like you need to understand is that she's a rebellious teenager and she's like like she's mischievous and everything, and one thing that she needs to do to like better herself and kind of get rid of her homunculus, which is like this kind of sand monster kind of thing, is to do something that she's never done before, which that thing is having sex. And since she hasn't had sex before, he's like, oh, in order to like get rid of her homunculus or something, like he needs to she needs to have sex. And then, bro, why did he? Man, honestly, man, I'm just on the bus chilling, and this scene comes on. I'm like, what is this? It's like when I was reading Berserk, and the horse scene came up. If you know, you know. The horse scene came up when I was literally out, and I was like, okay, shit. Like honestly, this is one of the reasons why I don't like reading manga on like the train or like public transport. Basically, manga in public, because you honestly never know what's gonna happen. Because I was reading it, and then this shit came up, and I was like, bro, like I hope no one sees this shit, because they probably think that I'm reading like some hentai shit. That's like one of the bad things about it, I guess. And like it's so weird because like she herself, she's proper messed up. Like she steals, like she cuts her ankle because it's not visible on her wrist. Like if you did her wrist, it would be quite clear. But then she literally cuts her ankle, like behind her foot basically, and then she licks her blood and she eats it. And you know, you're probably thinking, yo, she literally eating her own, like cutting herself to drink her own blood. Bro, that's not the weirdest thing, you know. This guy, Nakoshi, bro, let me just... Okay, yeah, his name's Mr. Nakoshi. Bro, he's a weirdo, man. He literally eats his own... What's like, what kind of, I don't know how to say like a code word for it, but his jizz, he eats his own children. Bro, they kind of explain why he did it later on, which was what he's basically trying to like, he can't feel anything, or he's like numb to stuff, which is like, bro, I don't know, man. Even I still don't know. I read the whole thing. I still don't know why he does it, but yeah, he's a weird dunny, bro. He's a weird dunny. But I mean, Homunculus isn't all bad. Like there are like really good plot points, and which is why majority of Homunculus, I say, is a really good read. There's the 15 volumes that it has, 14 of them I like. It's the last one that it just lost me. Like honestly, I don't even know if I really like the manga as a whole, just because of the last what's it called? The last chapter, I mean the volume, the last volume just kind of lost me. Honestly, I was just like, you get me? But so he ends up, you know, singing her, and then the mom catches them, but then her mom, like, I don't know what's wrong with her mom either. Like, you see how confusing this manga is, man. But I mean, I understand it. It's just I don't know how to explain it. That's the best way that I can like put it. But I don't know what's wrong with the mom. But then she sees it, and then there was honestly, I'm not gonna lie. The illustration was really cool, where there was the moon, and then she like he literally bit her what's it called? He bit her ankle where she would cut herself. And then it was bleeding everywhere, and then she put her foot up in the window, and then there was like this blood spatter where the moon was, and honestly that was actually kind of cool, which is like, again, going into the art, the art of it is just like really cool. It's super good, and especially when like they're at the certain scenes, they're just like super good. You can just tell that he took like a lot of time during it, and yeah, I mean, bro, I don't know, man. Like this manga, bro. It's just trying to explain it. It's just like it's making me my mind fuddle. But after that, sorry, this song's too good, bro. Okay, but after that, it's like a lot of plot points. To be fair, like they talk more about the homunculus, and then also there's like this egg thing at the park. Like there's this person at the park, this old man, and that was a really good one where he basically spoke to one of the homeless people that at the park, and then you have like this conversation where he's basically talking about his old life, the person's old life, and how he got to the point where he was homeless, and it was actually really sad. I don't want to explain it because again it'll take too long, but there is a lot of good in the homunculus manga, but again it's just like a lot of weird and disgusting things in it. But I do really like the gore in it, the gore aspect, and you know when he basically he wanted to conduct a second trapezium because he said it wasn't working properly or something. He basically lost the ability to see the homunculus because the person that initially did it, he only used a 3mm screw to make the hole, but then it works best with like 7mm. So then he did a self trapezium, and it was just awesome, like illustrations, everything. But again, like honestly, that whole scene, it was a mix between like just like yo, this is actually like really cool, and then just like disgust. Like honestly, like I don't even know if I want to show it, but I mean I'll show like some. But there was this one scene where he was like smiling, and then while he was he was drilling a hole in his head, and he was in front of the mirror. It was so cool, but at the same time, it made me like it made me squeamish. Like how am I squeamish after I read Berserk and like a few other horror like gory stuff? I don't know, man. Okay, so here's I'm just using my other phone to kind of show a few of the illustrations and like how actually cool they were. Like this. Okay, don't. Okay, we'll skip back past that, but like you can really see like how good the art actually is. Like, but what? Like this, like honestly, this whole scene just had me so squeamish. Like, bro, look at that and tell me that this guy's not crazy. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie, this is actually one of my favorite panels though. And then, bro, that was just I don't know, man. That was just too much for me. You know, that was too much for me. Like when I was reading, I was just like, ugh. Like, why am I even reading at this point? Like, I thought it was supposed to be like a horror psychological thing, not like I don't know, whatever the hell it is. There's a lot more to cover, but again, I'm not gonna cover everything because there's just way too much to cover. But what else is there to talk about? I mean, there was a basically he had plastic surgery, and then it went into a little bit into his backstory on how he became homeless and what events led up to him being homeless and what actually happened, etc. So one of the things that like that was one of the really good things that I did enjoy because he kind of became the reason why he lost his job was because he became more human. Like before he was like, oh okay, he ran away from his old life because he came from the country and when like he just wanted to he was really ugly basically. He was super ugly. He was like really insecure, so he left his no, he left the countryside to come to Tokyo and work in Tokyo, and he wanted to leave everything behind. So then he dumped the only person that like actually really looked at him for his heart. That was his girlfriend Nanako. His girlfriend Nanako, the reason why he dumped her was because she was ugly, and so then he left. He left. Sorry. So he left her, and then he left the countryside as well because he wanted to like start a new life. So that's why he had surgery to get like a face construction surgery, and he basically just like changed his face, and then that's when like other people started like actually looking at him, etc. Like he didn't change anything else about his personality. He just started getting more attention and looks from people, and it really does do a good job of like explaining his thought process and everything. And then he's like, even when he thought that he got what he wanted, which was like a better face and more attention, he became even more sad, and then he just started like looking down more and more because he just felt like everything was fake, and all the attention, like even though he was like he was at the point where like a lot of people in their life would want to be at, but then he was just like really unhappy. He was like, no one's truly looking at my heart like Nanako did, and then he realizes that he shouldn't have left her just because she was ugly, because she was the only person that actually like looked at his heart and for who he was. But yeah, that was like a really beautiful part of it. And there's this really confusing part where Nanako, she comes back. She basically did a similar thing to what he did, which was leave whatever area it was. She had face construction surgery, and then she was odd herself. Like I don't know like her motivation to why she was acting so weird. Like. And then he was like, oh, Nanako would never lie and all of this stuff. Like, it was so confusing, honestly. But I'm just gonna start talking about the ending now because, again, there's still a lot to speak about. So the ending, that's where it, like, kind of put me, like, I was ready to put it in my like top 5 or at least like top 10 manga. But then, like, the ending, it was just like so fast paced. Like the pacing throughout the whole thing was like really good. It was really good, honestly. Like I really liked how everything did seem like it was going quickly. It was like quite fast paced in the first place. But then it was like good. It was like, okay, you never know what's gonna happen next. Like that's what I really liked about it, because I was like, oh, like in the same chapter, there would be like so many events and like psychological like conversations and everything that would happen, and then it would literally never leave me bored. That's one thing that I really liked about it. It never left me bored because I was like, there was always something to do, and it executed like so well. Like honestly, like the art drew me in, the writing, like the psychological stuff. But a lot of it was just weird, and I still don't understand the meaning behind it. Like he made a person like dress up as a girl or something. I was like, and he kissed him. I was like, bro, what is this? And then he was like, no, look at me. Off this, like there was a guppy thing. Like, bro, I don't know, man. Like they probably think that I'm crazy myself, but it was really good. It was really good. But then the last volume where he basically, him and Nanako, they went away together, and then he basically confronted. It was actually pretty good conversation for the most part, but then it was still really weird at the same time. Like the whole manga is weird to, at this point. Honestly, like the most normal thing about it is seeing the homunculus. Like honestly. So they run away together, and then she convinces him. No, so he convinces her that he can see homunculus, and he kind of proves it because there was like someone who followed them, and then he kept saying like, oh, I can see your heart, I can see your heart, like give me a chance, Nanako. But then she was like, no, you're lying, you can't see my heart, all of this stuff. But then like with heart, it means like homunculus, so he wasn't really entirely wrong. Like even I don't even really understand what the whole homunculus thing is, because he, you know, the person that tried doing it in the first place, like that did it to him in the first place, he he was like, oh, it was an experiment. It wasn't actually for the trypanesium to see if it worked or not. It was about placebo effect. But placebo effect is basically when you believe something so much where it literally becomes true. It's a bit like manifestation, but it's where, okay, let's say that your grandmom, she says to you, if you want to get rid of headaches, then you put like a towel on your head and a bowl, and you put water, and then since you believe it so much, it actually works. Like it's a real thing. Like it really works sometimes. Like I've seen a few videos where basically someone says, "Oh, here's a weed brownie," but it's like a normal brownie or something, and then they act all high, and they genuinely believe that. That's due to the placebo effect, and it's really interesting when it was talking about the placebo effect as well. But so she basically someone followed them, and then he said he like had a very brief conversation with the person. He was about to shoot him actually, but then he started like speaking to him through his heart, his homunculus, and then he left like crying, and then that's when Nanako like actually believed like, oh, like you're not BSing basically. So then he convinces her like, oh, you should get trypanesium as well, because since I can see your true self and I can see your heart, I want you to see my heart as well, like you used to. So she agrees to it, and he does trypanesium on her. And then, bro, after that, it was just, man, I was like, okay, like, this might actually be going somewhere. More weirdness happened. More weirdness, like, let's like, it just leaves me speechless. Like, what the, like, what the hell? Like, this whole manga is, like, oh my god, bro. So, he does trypanesium, and then he, like, I don't know if he, like, his trypanesium effects like evolve even more, but then he starts seeing literally everybody as himself, but he's still able to speak to their hearts, if that makes sense. Like he's able to do it like kind of flawlessly. Like before, he would have to have like quite long conversations with them in order for them to get rid of the homunculus and be like content with themselves, if that makes sense. Like when you get rid of your homunculus, the psychological problem that you had just goes away, if that makes sense. So before he would have like need to have like long conversations and be like, oh, tell me what happened. But then towards the ending, he kind of like masters it, and then he doesn't really need to. He could just like glare at people with like covering his right eye, and then he would be able to know instantly what the problem is. He would say like something brief to them, and then they would just like it would just be like that. So that's how bro. And then basically after he does trypanesium on her, they does a sex scene, and bro, tell me why the sex scene, the whole time it's his face on a girl's body. Really, like it's so weird. Like like how many times have I said weird this video? But honestly, that's the only way I can describe it, man. But it's kind of good weird. A lot of the times where I'm just like, it's interesting. It really is an interesting manga to read. But again, some parts are, for me, they're more like just disgusting than like cool or interesting or anything else, if that makes sense. So you kind of have like need to have a strong gut to read it. But after that, I think it hints that she dies from it, because you know the first time that he did trypanesium, he didn't do it properly because it got infected. But then the guy that did it in the first place, I actually really did like his character, because it talked about his homunculus and his relationship with his father and all of this stuff. Like it was actually really interesting, and it was good. Like I really liked that character. I forgot his name, so which is why I keep calling him the guy that did it to him. That's sus, okay. You know who I'm speaking about. The person that conducted the trapezium on him in the first place. Let's just call him N because I forgot his name. So N, he okay, he found out that he did trapezium on himself. Nakoshi, the main character, basically, he did the second time, and then it was like he didn't do it properly, or it wasn't like clean properly, which is why he got infected. So it kind of like the fact that he did it like last time incorrectly on himself. It foreshadowed that Nakoshi, she bled out after he did trapezium on her, because when he left the room, it like zoomed in on where he did the trapezium, and then like it was bleeding, and then it got more. So it hints at like she bled out, which makes sense towards like the ending, because after that there's a time skip. I think it was a year. Yeah, it was a year later, and then he's like gone fully fledged like thingy. He did trapezium. We can see 2 more times like over on top of his head, and then on the side. There might be more, but then obviously we could only see 2 more holes. So he had 4 in total, from what we could see. He had a beard, and then he, normally he would like cover his eye with his hand, but then he had like an eye patch with like that. It only covered his thingy eye, and then the person that conducted the trapezium on him in the first place, he finds him, and then he's at like what's it called? He's at like a pier, and then the pier is beautiful, written out like beautifully, honestly. Like every time there's a scene where he does go to the sea, like quite often in the manga, and every time it's written there, it looks so good. Sorry. So honestly, every time that his art appear, it's drawn so like beautifully. Like honestly, there's a lot that I have missed out. But again, that's why you should read it. Then you can truly understand like the whole manga, the manga as a whole, and a lot of the teachings and meanings that they've put in. Like I've caught out a lot, honestly. Like I've explained like 20% of the whole of the whole story overall, which just shows how like good it was. And since it was actually quite short, it has only 15 volumes. It only has 15 volumes, which is actually quite like, if you read it like, I don't know, like less than an hour a day, you can finish it in a week, honestly. But for that 15 volume, the volume 15, it just like put a bad taste in my mouth, honestly. Like the 14 before it was super good, but then that like whole sex scene with his face on it was just so, it just was like so unnecessary. And he was like, oh, look at me, look at me, look at my heart. I'm like, wow, man, I really keep quiet. Like he just kept rambling on a bit. And also we don't really see what happens after he leaves her in the hotel room with like her bleeding out, basically. But then basically the guy at the beginning, N, finds him in his car, and there's a few like really nice shots that are drawn like really well of like his car, and like, and basically Nakoshi, yeah. So as you can see here, he literally starts seeing everybody as his own face, and this. So, I think went the other way around. Whoops. But he literally says here, sorry. He goes, "Am I in heaven?" And then it's like, "Oh hell!" And then I don't know why, but like stuff like that is kind of cool. And then it just shows like 1 year later, and then this is how he looks like now. And then that's literally him later. And then he's eating in his car or whatever. So after that scene, it basically shows him being, oh, I finally found you. Which basically kind of shows that like he's been gone for the whole year. Like he hasn't been able to find him. And he basically, he sits in the car, and the one from the beginning, and he like talks to him briefly. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, it's my fault. And he was like, oh, you should try trypanesium as well. And he grabs a drill, and then while he's hugging him, he like points it to the back of him. But then obviously before he can actually like try drilling a hole in his head, he's like interrupted by 4 men walking towards a car, and he's like, oh, sorry, 1 second. He comes out, and then he's like, oh, it's you guys. And then, you know, it's better to just show you. Okay, so here's the 4 places that he did trypanesium. And then look, he hugs him and is like, I'm sorry. And then he grabs the screw and then he puts it by his head. And then he goes, look at me and I look at you. I'm like, bro, what? He's saying, I'm sorry. And then these are the 4 people that were walking towards him. So as you can see, like this is how they actually look like. He has a hat. You can see his hair. I don't know if it's bald, and then he has a hat. But then if you like scroll, this is how Nakoshi, I forgot his, whatever, man. This is how he actually sees them. And then he's like, bro, like what? And he goes like, oh, it's you guys, hey. What do you mean? And then it ends like literally. So he says, "Oh, it's you guys." He starts waving at them, and then this is it. And then it says Finn. I'm like, Finn, the what? Finn, like finish of what? I think that ending. I'm not gonna lie. The ending, like the last volume. Sorry, it just like put a bad taste in my mouth. Where I was just like, I'm not sure if I really like this anymore. Like, I don't know, man. The ending for me, I just didn't really like it. But it kind of, I think, like all of those people, they were police men and investigators, because I'm pretty sure he left Nakoshi in the hospital to bleed out. So remember when he left, she was bleeding out from the hole. So I think that's why that's what he got in trouble for, because he conducted it. It was unsafe, and then she died from it later on, because the guy from the beginning, he asked, oh, what happened to you, Nakoshi? And then he goes, oh, she wasn't able to see me, which, I mean, probably means that, like, oh, she died. Like, okay. So that was the end of it. Overall, I still would say it's like in my top 10, even though I've like said quite a few like bad things about it. But it really was like a really good read. I'm not gonna lie, and it had a lot of good to it. It was just like really weird, wacky, psychological. I really like the psychological aspect of it and the drawing aspect of it. Like there really was a lot of good to actually take away from this, but again, bro, those last 2 chapters, the last volume was like just too weird for me, and I think that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Again, the things that like put me off like a lot was the rape scene of the 17-year-old girl. I was like, what? Like, I don't know, man. And then he eats his children. And there's like a bunch of other stuff as well that just made me say, what the F? Like there's no need for this, if that makes sense. But that's my review on it. Overall, I'd probably give this, I mean, if they made the last volume better, I'd say probably like a high 8, like 8.7 or 9. But then if like that was if they fixed it, basically. Like if they fixed the ending, the last volume. But without it, I'd say it's probably like an 8. Honestly, it really was good. Although, like, despite all of the bad things that I've been saying about it, but I do encourage more people to read it, because again, it was really enjoyable to read. It was actually good, and I think, yeah, I guess that's my review on it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully I'll be making a video on Green Lantern, the animated series. It's honestly a slapped on series. Like it's I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching this um watching this like abysmal video. Honestly, it was so unorganized. But see you guys in the next video. Peace.